Salutations, the name's Cavill. What is my favorite video game? People have been asking since I started this channel, and it's time to put these rumors to rest once and for all.
It's only been a month.
Shush! Life is Strange 2, Deltarune, Black and White. None of that compares to my absolute crown jewel, Dynamite Heady. For real though, I was always terrible at Mortal Kombat, but I love the characters and storyline. Hence, I was ecstatic to hear they're bringing MK to the small screen. I'd get to see Scorpion, Kano, and Johnny Cage not only animated, but without any of the fights that would usually interrupt it. Enter 2019's Scorpion's Revenge. This film is one of my favorites. The animation is stunning, handled by the same people beyond the current DC films. Not only is it beautifully styled, but perfectly fluid. You feel every hit in the action scenes. And this action, my god, it's like Invincible on steroids. But it doesn't stop there. The technicals are superb. A shot lit by a torch looks completely different than any shot lit by the sun. And don't get me started on moonlit shots. The environments too are incredibly interesting. Most of them have a bit of a gritty look, but this incredible understanding of color. The yellows of Kano's dungeon, the greens of the jungle, and the reds of Netherrealm. Now there are two major plots going on, but they're interconnected. There are 3 realms, and every 1,000 years a supernatural Hunger Games takes place between them. It's called Mortal Kombat, and the winner gains certain rights over other realms. Outworld, the villains, have won 9 in a row, and one more victory means they'll be allowed to invade Earthrealm. For Mortal Kombat, Earthrealm has produced Liu Kang, Sonya Blade, and Johnny Cage. They each have a limited impact on the storyline because it is just punching from point A to B, but I'll get into the characters later on. Meanwhile in Japan, Scorpion, his clan, his wife, and his son are assassinated by the Lin Kuei, a ninja clan led by Sub-Zero. He then arrives in Netherrealm and goes full Doomslayer until cutting a deal with Hell's second in command. Quan Chi says that Sub-Zero will partake in Mortal Kombat, and if Scorpion joins on behalf of Netherrealm, it'll be the perfect opportunity for revenge. The catch, Hell's first in command is sealed in an amulet, and Scorpion is commanded to steal it. Now the primary storyline I describe as simple, but the secondary storyline I describe as trite. It goes exactly how you'd expect. Scorpion accidentally kills an innocent man, swears off revenge, and goes right back to revenge seeking. The only surprise was the twist villain. Not because Quan Chi wasn't blatantly evil, just because of how forced it is for him to disguise as Sub-Zero and wipe out Scorpion's clan. I think I'm making the film sound bad, so let's move on to the characters. It's a pretty good cast. They range from charming to forgettable. Liu Kang is a typical chosen one. I have literally nothing to say about him, and the same goes for Sonya Blade. The opposite comes in the form of Johnny Cage, someone who was annoying towards the start but grew on me. He is incredibly arrogant. He thinks they're just shooting a movie until halfway through, but over time he becomes the heart of the group. When the heroes meet Scorpion, Johnny convinces them not to fight. When Sonya runs off, Johnny chooses to follow her instead of defeating Goro. He does feel like pointless comic relief at times, but at other times I really appreciate his optimism. Next is Raiden, who is a non-presence. He insists on following the rules of Mortal Kombat while Shang Tsung proudly evades them. I would probably forget him if not for 2 things, his dialogue and his voice.
The key won't solve your problems. It will, however, create new ones. Revenge is too heavy a burden to carry. You are a free man. It's time you start acting like it.
I don't know if I'd call either of them exceptional, but they go hand in hand. He is just an interesting guy to listen to. Last person on the hero side is Scorpion, my favorite character. Now his story is literally the most generic possible, but I enjoy him for a very simple reason. His fight scenes are the best. Not best in the movie, best of all time. I'm only barely exaggerating, until the finale, when I'm not exaggerating at all. Imagine if Omni-Man was slightly less powerful. Just slightly. You'd think action would get boring with such an overpowered character, but no. This film has such a profound sense of physics that you get lost in every hit. You never feel there's a chance he'll lose, you're just anticipating what move he'll pull next. This becomes especially intense when he's pit against Liu Kang in the finale. Even more intense when he proceeds to attack Quan Chi, a character with powers rivaling the Elder Gods. This is actually something very important to understand about the film. It's all about the action. You aren't really supposed to enjoy the character traits of Johnny Cage, you're supposed to enjoy the fights that result from them, which again are some of the best in cinema. Now for the villains, with the most important being Shang Tsung. Imagine Count Frollo if God was even more evil than he was. The power Shang Tsung wields and his devotion to Shao Kahn is terrifying. Your mind wanders to what else Shao Kahn, and Shang Tsung by proxy, are capable of. Not only is he powerful, but so damn hateable. The way he blatantly cheats and taunts Raiden with it, you want to see him die way more than Quan Chi. Which, let's talk about. Quan Chi isn't a bad character at all, but the twists are just so damn stupid. Why would you reveal your plan right when Scorpion is bleeding to death? If you waited 5 minutes, he'd be sent to Netherrealm, where he'd be totally helpless. But if you ignore the way he framed Sub-Zero, there's nothing outwardly wrong about him. He wants to rescue his master from the amulet, and even tries to poison Shang Tsung for it. Villains betraying one another is my favorite trope in all of fiction. It basically drains all of the evil from the betrayee and gives it to the betrayer. But this film builds on that by having Shang Tsung predict the poison and attack Quan Chi, adding intelligence to the reasons you should fear him. Overall, Quan Chi is an important part of the film. He makes Scorpion, Raiden, Shang Tsung, and eventually Shinnok into way more interesting characters. But as an individual, he falls flat. He's a generic twist villain with too much twist and not enough villain. But he partook in the best fight scene of all time, so all's forgiven. There are other villains, but they are one note. Goro does the job. He's a giant, intimidating monster for the heroes to slay. A shining example of why evil minions don't gotta be complicated. Not that he could ever replace Jim Henson. Then there's Kano, who shocked me with how little he did. He kidnaps Jax and makes fun of Sonya. That's legit where it ends. He dies before throwing a single punch. But he somehow manages to do more than Sub-Zero, who I loved in the opening, but we find out that was just Quan Chi in disguise. Technically, we don't see Bi-Han for an entire hour, and he dies in his debut scene. He only has one line total.
You dishonor this tournament.
He and Scorpion are the only two characters to ever go on a game's cover art, and they completely waste him. Yeah, the fight between him and Scorpion was pretty great, but they should have just had him actually kill Scorpion's family. It's so ironic because this movie was in production at the same time as the 2021 film, which screwed up every character except Kano and Sub-Zero. I feel like my review is sounding negative, and there's a reason for that. Have you ever tried to describe why a joke is funny? Well, describing why a fight is engaging is 12 times harder. I'm kinda hoping the background footage will sell you on it. Something much easier would be explaining why a fight isn't engaging. So let's move on to... Now, Scorpion's revenge was a very tough act to follow, but this film definitely could have done better. The plot is that due to losing Mortal Kombat number 10, Shao Kahn calls Double or Nothing. A final Mortal Kombat to determine the fate of the realms once and for all. Raiden accepts the opportunity to save Earthrealm, and even relinquishes his own godhood to join the tournament. I wish I could say this means he does more for the plot, but it only means that he gets a mentor death. He's actually shockingly weak as a mortal. Despite that, I enjoyed him even more this time.
And if they catch me, what then? Maybe I should open the door for them. End it all.
You have long straddled the fence between light and dark, Hanzo. It is time you pick a side. I believe that is what your wife and child would have wanted.
And yes, as you saw there, Scorpion is in this movie. The A-plot and B-plot only come together at the end, so I'll cover them separately. Something else I should cover separately is the opening, which feels like a different movie entirely. Outworld is waging war on Earthrealm and the action is phenomenal. The monsters have stunning designs, and watching them be pulled apart with punches and blades is just as fun as it was in the first film. Not only that, but Johnny Cage gets his funniest lines yet, and Shao Kahn gets one of the best villain intros I've ever seen, with Liu Kang failing to even stagger him. Elephant in the room though, this film was clearly hit pretty hard by COVID. This quality lasts until they travel to Outworld, then it drops hard. The action becomes simple punches, throws, and the occasional puncture. Gone is the cinematic timing, camera angles, and Hunger Game structure. Instead, they're more like Pokemon battles. Two combatants are randomly chosen, dragged into Shao Kahn's arena, and whoever doesn't die moves on to the next round. This environment destroys the film. There are no environmental hazards to spice up the action, and the characters have zero room to explore. This means that action is limited to who can hit the hardest, and characterization is limited to chatting on the sidelines. The biggest problem with this film is that I'm out of things to talk about. Shonen anime is famous for having tournament arcs that take way too long and are boring as hell, but here's an entire movie dedicated to it. All that's left of the A-plot is a bunch of standalone moments I find interesting, such as Shao Kahn's fake-out death. I might be a complete moron, but I totally bought it. I actually laughed when he got back up and the movie continued as normal. Speaking of whom, Shao Kahn has some of the best fights. Not because the action is especially good, longest one is about 30 seconds, but they're great for how they showcase his proudly brutal nature. He rips Kung Lao in half, he effortlessly crushes Jack's new arms, he beats his own daughter, and he turns Raiden into a pincushion before crushing his head. Scorpion's revenge readied me for Shao Kahn to be an insanely powerful sorcerer, and while he does have some magic, he just punches insanely hard and I love it. Speaking of villains, Shang Tsung makes a return, who I have mixed feelings toward. He feels much less intimidating, which was probably unavoidable now that Shao Kahn is introduced. That said, his action scenes are probably the best of the film. He has several awesome, but underutilized magic abilities, like transforming into his opponent, possessing his opponent, or the gruesome sight of him gripping Liu Kang's arm and inserting a curse. Also, Liu Kang capping both his knees is just hilarious, credit where it's due. And that's just about it until the finale. But before that, I need to discuss the B-plot, which has a lot more content, it's just more questionable content. In the first film, Scorpion stole Shinnok's amulet right before he died. This had the dual effect of freeing Shinnok and enchanting Scorpion's soul. Shinnok is voiced by the medic, which is the closest you'll get to a personality. Now bear with me while I try to explain. A trillion years ago, someone named the One Being bullied the Elder Gods. Then the Elder Gods killed him and his body transformed into the universe. There is an object called the Kame Doku, capable of resurrecting the One Being, but he will need to absorb the realms and rebuild his body. Shinnok was imprisoned by the Elder Gods, and now he wants the Kame Doku, but it's locked behind a magic door. Scorpion dying with the amulet granted him the ability to open said door. Shinnok must now coerce Scorpion to help destroy the universe, which would be easy except that Shinnok just allows him to leave Netherrealm. Enter Sub-Neo, what I call the second Sub-Zero. Shinnok hired the Lin Kuei to hunt down Scorpion, which excites Sub-Neo because he wants to avenge his older brother. However, the Grand Master chooses this wonderful moment to reveal a secret project. He's been transforming people into cyborgs and plans to do so to Sub-Neo. In conclusion, Scorpion is being hunted by Sub-Neo while the cyber Lin Kuei is hunting for both of them. Do not reply to any of those plot points with the word why or you'll only confuse yourself farther. Needless to say, the B-plot is quite bloated, and that continues into the finale, which I will get to. In Scorpion's Revenge, the A-plot is based entirely on MK1, while the B-plot takes elements from MK4. But Battle of the Realms is extremely messy with its source material. The Cyber Lin Kuei were introduced in MK2, the One Being was introduced in MK6, Fire God Liu Kang was introduced in MK11, and Shinnok was introduced in a spin-off game. Tying this much fan service into a B-plot means you won't have time to develop anything properly. In all fairness though, MK storylines can be hard to follow in their own right. The only thing that feels fully baked, and I'd honestly say makes this whole film worth it, would be Scorpion and Sub-Neo's relationship. Pretty funny considering that Sub-Zero was my biggest problem with the first one. Scorpion spent the first film doing horrible things in pursuit of revenge, but now he sees Sub-Neo doing exactly that. Scorpion needed the advice of a wiser being in order to move on, and now he's trying to give Sub-Neo exactly that. It's a beautiful display of character development, but with one narrative caveat from Sub-Neo's perspective. Being preached to by Raiden is far easier to swallow than being preached to by Quan Chi. Unfortunately, Scorpion is the one who murdered Sub-Zero, so it's tense when he tries to reason with Sub-Neo. The best part, he could so easily murder Sub-Neo, and I'm sure he would've in the first film, but he refuses to attack as a genuine attempt to do better. My only complaint would be that Sub-Neo ends up forgiving him way too easily. I mean, it took a long time, but once it actually happens, all hostility just vanishes. I can excuse it though because their bromance is goddamn biblical. They fight with such synergy together, and after being enemies the whole film, I can't help but smile. Now, finally, the climax. One of the worst I've ever seen. Liu Kang powers up and destroys Shao Kahn in one of the most brazen Deus Ex Machinas I've ever seen. There is no attempt at an explanation. Hell, no one in the movie even questions it. Then the Elder Gods arrive and grant Liu Kang a new form, before mentioning that Shinnok is summoning the One Being. Elder Gods. You know Shinnok is collecting the Kamedoku. You were the ones who imprisoned him originally. Why didn't you step in? Did you just have so much confidence in Liu Kang winning the tournament? Or did you think two puny ninjas could stop Shinnok on their own? People have always complained that the Elder Gods and even Raiden never seem to step in and prevent evil, but there is a reason for this. The Elder Gods crafted a constitution that is supposed to protect the realms from tyrants like Shinnok, but not undermine their freedom like the One Being does. You can get away with a lot of evil without breaking any specific laws, however, which is why Shao Kahn has to be so careful. None of this applies to Shinnok, their most notorious criminal. The Elder Gods turning a blind eye when Shinnok tries to destroy the universe is like the US government turning a blind eye when YouTube steals millions of dollars from their... okay, bad example. It's a testament to what an utter mess this ending is. Like, Johnny Cage randomly uses the War Cult powers for one kick, something they didn't even bother to establish in-universe. I feel really bad for any non-Mortal Kombat fans who picked this film up and are just completely lost right now. Now what do the characters do aside from Liu Kang? Well, Johnny, Sonya, and Katana begin rescuing innocents. I mean, they could do absolutely nothing against the One Being himself, so it's nice watching them do what little they can to help. These segments aren't bad. The opposite can be found with Scorpion and Sub-Neo, who team up with Liu Kang to defeat the One Being. This is some of the most broken power scaling I've ever seen. Their ice blast should feel like nothing more than mosquito bites. In the first film, Scorpion shouts, "Get over here," before slaying a demon overlord, and I was in awe. In this film, Scorpion shouts, "Get over here," before slaying a super god, and I actually laughed. Let's hope the next film can't have a climax this bafflingly awful. Oh god. Oh god, this is one of the most blatantly broken films I've ever seen. Like, Battle of the Realms clearly had its later half ravaged by COVID, but this movie is norm of the North tier. I don't even know where to start. How about the Blu-ray package? As you can see, Warner Bros. Movies used to come with a Blu-ray for my collection, a DVD for lending the film to friends, and a digital code for convenient watching. With Battle of the Realms, they decided to remove the DVD, which upset me, but I'm sure it saved them a few dollars. Then in Snowblind, they didn't even include the digital code. Just why? Those are completely free to produce. It's the only one that isn't in my collection, but maybe I should be glad considering what this movie lacks. Like the cast. Shockingly, this film has zero connection to the first two. The only returning characters are Sub-Neo, Shang Tsung, and Kano. No, Scorpion doesn't count. Hell, Shang Tsung barely counts. They wanted to spotlight a protagonist from one of the later games, but was this really necessary? You may also have noticed that Kano is here, who died in the first film. Why? Well, strap in, because this is one of those films you need to discuss as a timeline rather than a narrative. Kano got a hold of Kronika's hourglass, and I've lost you already. Who is Kronika? A time lady from MK11, as powerful as the One Being. Kano holds her skull, implying he killed her and took her hourglass, even though he's supposed to be the dead one. For maximum benefit of the doubt, Kano dying would send him to Netherrealm, which is where Kronika put her hourglass in MK11. However, this movie doesn't specify any relation to MK11, so in the end, Kano is alive and able to rewrite time for no reason at all. Summoning a horde of demons to Earth is the first thing Kano decides to do. I think. Apparently he has restarted the timeline several times before the movie starts. The Revenants might be relatively new. Anyways, they ravage Earthrealm, the setting is one big desert. Kano did this to weaken Earthrealm before the Black Dragon gang conquers it, which the Elder Gods still don't prevent. Kronika is Shinnok's mother. They created their constitution specifically to prevent shit like her hourglass. I don't even know if it's a plot hole at this point or if the Elder Gods are just supposed to be this frustratingly incompetent. Hell, what about Fire God Liu Kang?
But Shao Kahn's body's gone. What happens when he or someone else gets the itch to take over Earthrealm again?
Then we will be there to stop them. Together.
Kano gets the itch to conquer Earthrealm? Nah mate, Liu Kang's going to Fiji or something. I mean, it's not like Kano removed him from the timeline. The movie opens with tearing down a statue of him. I have to assume Kano murdered him with whatever power enabled him to kill Kronika. By the way, this hourglass is an ending twist. You spend the film with no idea why anything is happening, and then at the end they try to explain all of it with time travel. It's like, oh no, my living room is a mess, my kitchen is full of flies, and my furniture is ugly. Might as well burn down the entire goddamn house. I could do a supplementary video listing the individual ways that Kano and the hourglass don't make sense, but we need to move on. It's just a really sloppy twist. After the Revenants rise, Sub-Neo leads the Lin Kuei to rescue a city, ignorant to just how powerful the Revenants are. In desperation, he casts Snowgrave, killing the entire Lin Kuei but saving himself. He then takes an oath never to use cryomancy again, which Scorpion will take him to hell if he breaks. From that point on, he has recurring nightmares about being tortured by his brother Sub-Zero. But he eventually realizes it isn't Sub-Zero at all, it's himself. It's a solid backstory, but I have a few complaints. Firstly, what's with the Sub-Zero hate? He spent the whole second film trying to avenge him.
For a long time, I thought the worst thing that I could become was my brother.
He's done one thing in this entire trilogy, kick Kano in the face, and that probably came closer to stopping the Revenants than anything Sub-Neo's done. Speaking of which, Sub-Neo's flashback is all we see of said Revenants. People talk about them like they're around every corner, but we don't even learn what they do really, just that they somehow turn the planet into a desert. I'd guess they're just too expensive to animate, because this film is one of the cheapest I've seen in a while. It has one extremely boring setting, random drops in the frame rate, and the worst fight scenes I've ever seen. No, these don't deserve to be called fight scenes. It's like Steven Universe where all of the punches just awkwardly miss. This is a bigger problem than you might think, because even in Scorpion's Revenge, the characters were always supplementary to the action. It's not like Epithet where the characters are designed to carry the entire story. Battle of the Realms was boring because most of the fight scenes sucked, but this film is a next level snore. There are a few decent ones like Kenshi v Black Dragon or Shang Tsung v Kano, but none of them are what I'd call good. No joke, they obscure the final battle with snow to try and hide how god-awful it is. Except Scorpion, weirdly enough, he gets one fight, but it's one of the best we've seen from him. Speaking of which, this is the first film with no Scorpion B-plot, probably cut for budget. He arrives at the end of the film to aid Sub-Neo, and his outfit implies he's now some kind of overlord. Maybe after Quan Chi and Shinnok died, Scorpion was able to claim the throne and has waged war with the Revenants ever since? It's just fanfiction, but what else am I supposed to do? There are barely enough clips to sustain this segment about him. Back on track, enter Kenshi Takahashi, the main character who it's taken 2 pages to mention. He's your typical, arrogant war child. Imagine Johnny Cage without any of the charm. I thought he'd have the exact same character arc of learning to take things seriously, and he sorta does, but it comes about in a far more interesting way. Shang Tsung tricks him into exchanging his eyesight for a magic sword, but without his eyes, he loses all self-respect. It's Sub-Neo who teaches him to adapt to this disability and renew his hope, but shockingly, the mentorship isn't one way. Kenshi is stubborn while Sub-Neo is running from his problems. When the Black Dragon conquers Kenshi's town, Sub-Neo demands they abandon it. Kenshi refuses because he has humbled himself by this point, but hasn't lost the will to stand his ground. This results in Kenshi being captured, which convinces Sub-Neo to summon Scorpion and use cryomancy once again. You may have noticed a lack of complaints in this area because, honestly, I love this part of the film. Kenshi and Sub-Neo aren't that interesting as individuals, but they have a beautiful dynamic. With the Revenants around, this easily could have been Last of Us. Their training arc is a lot of fun, mostly because they have such a believable relationship. A miserable old dude and an annoying little punk. When Sub-Neo goes to hell and asks Kenshi to rebuild the Lin Kuei, you really buy that Kenshi is losing something. This film did the mentor death way better than Battle of the Realms, and for something it did better than Scorpion's Revenge, have a look at Kano.
No! She's hurt! I'm not going to kill her!
Thank you, King Kano.
Oh, she's dead. Well, that was fun.
That one moment of brutality outdoes the entirety of Jack Horner. Every line from this dude is so damn quotable, I'd honestly say he's better than in the 2021 film. Then there's Shang Tsung, who is no longer an Outworld. Why? The film never questions it. Perhaps Shao Kahn tried to execute him for losing 2 consecutive Mortal Kombats. Again, I hate to try and insert my own fanfiction, but the plot is just so battered and broken I have no choice but to try and patch it up. I wouldn't call Shang Tsung bad. I mean, it's funny to watch someone as highly as him serve someone as lowly as Kano, but he probably shouldn't have been in the movie. He ruins Kenshi's eyes, and then he dies. I mean, blinding Kenshi was the film's inciting incident, it had to happen somehow, but I can think of more efficient ways than a pointless villain subplot. He does become young Shang Tsung, which is a nice bit of fan service, but only half points because his voice remains old. It wouldn't have been hard to say, introduce Kronika's hourglass during his subplot, or do anything to give him just a bit of significance. Could have been worse though, his death is one of the most brutal yet.
Impossible. Your soul. Oh, mate. I'm way past having a soul.
If Shang Tsung gets a segment, then I suppose Tremor deserves one. He gets all the same accolades as Goro, just a great big bowling pin with a very unsatisfying death. I guess I could also bring up Cabal, who is noticeably fatter in this movie. Maybe that's why he doesn't have super speed anymore. They start a subplot about him trying to defect from the Black Dragon, but they never bring it up again. The movie has a lot of plot threads that lead nowhere like that. The Takahashi family has some kind of prophecy, Kenshi's sword talks to him at first, Shang Tsung in general, Sub-Neo hating his brother, the Revenants. I can just feel notes all over the script saying, expand on this in the next draft. But they never did another draft because Warner Bros. Thought we were dying for a sequel to Battle of the fucking Realms. They thought we were in such critical condition they announced the 4th movie 3 days before Snowblind even came out. Will I review Cage Match when it comes out? I don't know, maybe when I finally beat Dynamite Heady. At the very least I'll give it a percentage. But then I guess you'll need a comparison. Scorpion's Revenge scores 90%. One big problem, a few potential nitpicks, and the best action I've ever seen. Battle of the Realms, 60%. It spent 30 minutes being good, then 30 minutes being okay, then 20 minutes being complete nonsense. Snowblind gets only 25% despite having the best title of the bunch. It has good moments, it really does, but they're so hard to enjoy when they're in such a swarm of bad decisions. If that pattern repeats, Cage Match will get negative 15%. Fatality.